Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this policy dialogue on digitalization for agriculture and Asia. My name's Jessica, and with Pierre, we're from the Dgroups Foundation, and we will be your facilitation team today. So it's my pleasure to welcome you and all our speakers today for this session. So before we start, just a few housekeeping things. So a disclaimer that we are recording today. And so by being present, you're giving your permission for any sharing of the recording and yourself in it, should you take part in any way in the chat box. As we're a webinar, we won't see your faces today as participants, but we really welcome you to this session, and we invite you to engage through the chat box and through the Q&A. So you will see those at the bottom of your screen. So we ask if you try and keep your questions to the Q&A box, and they will be fed to our moderators for the panel session, so you can pop those in throughout the session. And then just use the chat box to introduce yourselves for any other comments and anything else you'd like to share through the session today. So just a quick overview of the programme. In a moment, we'll have some welcome remarks. And then we've got two sessions today. Our first session will be looking at policies and pathways to digitalisation in agriculture in Asia. And we will potentially have a quick reflection between that from you all. And then we'll dive into our second section, which is really looking at country perspectives. And then today we will be sharing a short video demonstration of the Digital Agri Hub dashboard for you all to see before we move to closing remarks and an evaluation survey. So before we start, we've got a quick Menti for you. So we'd really like to know what brought you here today. So what do you hope to learn in today's session? So I'm sure lots of you have used Menti before. You can directly scan that QR code with your phone, or in a moment I will pop in the chat box the link, so you can also go straight to Menti. So if you go to menti.com, if you click on the link in the chat box or scan the QR code, then we'll be able to find out a little bit about what you all hope to learn from today's session. So we'll give you a moment to do that. And while we do that, I'll just have a little look in the chat box. It's so nice to see everyone introducing themselves, to see where you're all coming from today. Also, we have people from many continents, not just Asia. So very warm welcome to you all. And if you are able to open the chat, find that link for Menti or scan the QR code, and I will ask Pierre if we have any exciting answers coming in via Menti.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm sharing my screen now. You should all be able to see it. Let me maximize it so we can go full screen. And as I'm also sharing the screen, it's getting busy, but hopefully, yeah, we can all see the answers coming in.
Yes, very technical answers coming in. People looking at what works, what didn't, learning what others have established, how to convince brick and mortar agribusinesses to adopt technology. Yeah, sometimes we're slow at adopting technology, some are quicker than others. Models and frameworks, how digitalization in agricultural extension policy could be planned, especially with focus on women farmers. Yeah, really important to think about our inclusion in these conversations and experiencing best practices. So it's really interesting to hear what everybody is here to learn, and I'm sure our session facilitators will be able to comment on that in later sessions. So feel free to keep those answers coming throughout the session. We'll potentially have another Menti a bit later on. But yeah, thank you everyone for taking part in that. So shall we carry on, Pierre? Wonderful. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our welcome remarks speaker, Tetsushi Sonobe. He is Dean and CEO of the Asian Development Bank Institute. Thank you so much, Tetsushi. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Good day from Tokyo. Warm welcome to this virtual policy dialogue on digitalization for agriculture in Asia. On behalf of ADBI, I'd like to express our sincere gratitude to the Digital Agri Hub for co-organizing this important event, to the Grameen Foundation for moderating the panel discussions, and to Dgroups Foundation and the Indonesia Commodity and Derivatives Exchange, ICDX, for their support with logistics, including facilitation. I thank Mr. Collis, moderators, and the panelists for their discussions. Thank you also to the audience for taking the time to join us today. The world's agri-food system is facing triple challenges. First, it needs to drastically reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. Second, it needs to scale up production to meet the demand increase due to a projected 2 billion person increase in the global population. The risk of food insecurity is increasing these days. Third, because of global warming and increasing natural disasters, the agri-food system needs to become more resilient. Fortunately, human ingenuity and scientific and technological breakthroughs have produced a wide range of digital tools to transform the agri-food system, increasing production, mitigating its impact on climate change and natural ecosystems, and mitigating the impact of climate change on itself, on the other hand. Accelerating digital transformation in agriculture will be critical to building a resilient, sustainable, and inclusive agri-food system. Today's webinar is highly relevant to the situation. It will provide a great opportunity to examine outlook for digitalization in agriculture development in Asia and the Pacific. We are joined by government officials, experts from international organizations, academia, think tanks, and solution providers. They will discuss policy challenges and strategies for achieving breakthroughs in digitalization for agriculture, including questions as to how technologies and private sector initiatives help, how to make various useful services provided for farmers through digitalization more useful, how to make beneficial policy interventions more beneficial, how to make great services and great policy interventions scale, and what roles should be played by local governments, national governments, regional and global multilateral organizations. Today, I look forward to vigorous exchanges of opinions, sharing and comparing experiences in different countries, and exploring the same underlying structures in seemingly diverse experiences. I look forward to great takeaways. I encourage all participants to engage in these discussions by asking questions and sharing your experiences. I wish you all a very fruitful webinar. Thank you for your attention. Over to you, Jessica and Pierre.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sonobe, for those words and for starting us off. We may have a second welcome remarks speaker. Can I see if Sander Janssen is with us from the Digital Agri Hub and would like to say a few words? If you are, could you turn on your microphone? Oh, yeah, there you are. So hello. As lead coordinator for the Digital Agri Hub, I give you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. So hello, everybody. Welcome to this exciting webinar on the Asian geography. As Digital Agri Hub, we are, of course, working to stimulate the development of the digital agriculture sector. And we have been running webinars like these events in Latin America and the Francophone countries. And now we are very excited to hear and to discover what's happening in Asia. And we are very grateful also to the Asian Development Bank Institute to help us in this discovery route and to meet all these exciting participants here in the webinar. So I'm really looking forward to hear more from you as participants, what is going on in Asia, what do you think the priorities are, and especially also this link to local government and challenges there in supporting the development of the digital agriculture sector. And yeah, for us, it's a starting point in this journey. So we hope that you're all, after this, also excited to continue working on digital agriculture and to engage with one another, find one another, and build the next steps in the digital agriculture sector. Also, I would like to thank all of you for participating, the panelists and speakers, and also Dgroups for facilitating. And now I will go back to Jessica and Pierre for the real continuation of the session. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sander. It's great to have you here with us. Okay, so I think without any further ado, we will go to session one. Very exciting session. I'm sure it's going to have lots of energy, and it's my pleasure to hand directly over to Gigi Gatti from the Dgroups Foundation, who is going to facilitate this session. Over to you, Gigi.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and welcome to our first session. Despite advances in technology and communications, digitalization in agriculture has not really reached the point where smallholder farmers are truly benefiting from it on a nationwide scale and even on a regional scale. Oftentimes, governments need support in the development of policies for digitalization in agriculture, increase their capacity to implement and work with solution providers, the private sector, and other stakeholders. Today, we will explore what it takes to do this. My name is Gigi Gatti, and I work for Dgroups Foundation USA as the Senior Director of Program Strategy and Learning. This theme is very close to my heart, having worked in the Asian Development Bank in the past, and also having worked as the regional director, for Asia for Dgroups Foundation in the past. So Asia and agriculture are very, very interesting topics to me. And I am very excited to be joined today by Gerard Sylvester, Investment Officer, Digital Agriculture at the Food and Agriculture Organization. We have Michiko Katagami, Principal Natural Resources and Agriculture Specialist at the Asian Development Bank. We have Jitendra Prakash Aryal, Agriculture Economist at the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center. Of course, we also have Wei Li Wu, Innovation Lead at Grow Asia. And we have Hera John, Executive Manager of the Partnership Division, Policy and Emerging Technology Development of Information, Communication and Technology of the Government of Papua New Guinea. So we really have a handful of very interesting discussants today. In digital agriculture projects that I have seen, there are always two major challenges: sustainability and scale. And to me, one of the best ways to achieve both sustainability and scale is through the public sector. However, many governments have not yet even started to develop their D4Ag policies and strategies. And so I would like to ask first, Gerard, okay, can you please share your thoughts on why it is very important for governments to have policies on D4Ag?
Thank you, Gigi, and it's a pleasure to be part of this panel. While we are talking about digitization for agriculture, the first thing that we need to realize is that it's a multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder kind of approach that is needed to even come closer to sustainability or scalability. Now, if we go with the traditional sense that since it's talking about agriculture, it's be only the agriculture ministry that's going to be involved, then both the scalability and the sustainability comes into big question on whether it will be possible. So this is where the presence of e-agriculture strategy or a digital for agriculture strategy or some kind of a guiding framework helps really to kind of rationalize both human and the resources that we have in country, find synergies with the other sectors, and to also leverage intersectoral developments. A very good example is, and I'm glad that Hira John is here in the panel too, is a fantastic example from PNG. It's one of the countries in which FAO and ITU helped develop the national e-agriculture strategy. And if I could be honest here, when we said we're going to develop the e-agriculture strategy for PNG, people were like, "Are you sure PNG?" They had all kinds of doubts. But then when we went ahead and did that, the kind of synergies and the partnerships that we were able to establish between the Department of Agriculture and the Department of ICT and NICTA, which is the telecom regulator, has been phenomenal. And in the process, everyone's capacity was increased, resources were pooled in, and there are several projects that DICT together with NICTA picks up from the strategy and starts to implement. In fact, one of the world's first kind of a traceability system based on blockchain for smallholder farmer was done in Jiwaka province, and it's being led by NICTA, which is the telecom regulator, and DICT. So a strategy kind of brings in these very diverse stakeholders together, and then you're trying to put in your resources, your expertise, your knowledge, and then that's kind of guides implementation and gives us a much better chance at sustainability and scalability. And again, remember, when you're talking about digitization, there is a huge amount of policy-based interventions, policy-based guidance that needs to be put, frameworks needs to be put in place. To quote one, you need to talk about data governance, because every week I end up talking to some startup company. They're doing it in Kenya or India or wherever, and the first thing they say is, we have the registration information for 100,000 farmers. And it kind of shocks me. And then I ask them, would you be able to share it with me? They said, sure, let's do an LOA or a MOU, and then we'll be happy to share it with you. Now, this is very dangerous, so this is where the role of the public sector comes into place. They need to put the checks and balance in place, because data, as we all know, is a double-edged sword, and it's sharp on both sides. So if you do not have the right policies in place to protect the privacy, the sharing, and all those things, then scalability and sustainability again becomes a challenge. Next, we need to go into the people component of it. Digital agriculture, or D4Ag, requires a lot of investment in agriculture human capital. You're asking farmers who have been working in the way that they're working for the last 40, 50 years to suddenly say that, hey, I'll send you some information on your mobile phone, and then you follow that advice and your crop will become, it'll yield double. No one is going to trust a small SMS message and put his whole livelihood into danger. So there needs to be an ecosystem to kind of bring that capacity, the understanding and knowledge to be able to sustain that. And finally, I'll conclude here, is the process part of it. When you're talking about digitization, you're not going to overlay digital interventions on traditional processes. That's retroactive. It's not going to give you any sort of gains. You need to re-engineer processes. You need to re-engineer the way things have been done, so that digitization really brings up a benefit, and you can have that leapfrogging effect when we are trying to bring in digitization into some of these agricultural value chains and agricultural happenings. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gerard, for putting that in the perspective. And I think you've unpacked a lot of questions already, from that response. And we have with us Michiko, from ADB, who works with ministries and government agencies. And we also have for us Wei Lin, Wei Li from Grow Asia, who works largely with the private sector. Now, Gerard was saying you need this ecosystem building, you need various stakeholders to get involved, Michiko, I was just wondering from your perspective, what does it take to work with ministries and government agencies, and what are the things that we should be considering?
Thank you. Indeed, Gerard covered most of the line issues in 5 minutes and upfront. So we have a very little to say. No, but it's that generally, I just agree with this that Gerard is that I think the point where he made a sort of this multi-stakeholder would have to put together is that if the purpose is being digitizing the whole value chain, that's a different story. Like Sonobe-san was mentioning about GHG emission profile was going to emission of the profile is going to be reduced, or the digitization as a tool to address the feeding challenge in the future, supply capacity we have to enhance. There's a lot of inefficiency happening in the production spaces, and also the distribution progressing from farm to fork. There's a lots of improvement that has to take place. To make that happen though, this not just for the digitization technology alone won't do much. You need infrastructure, you need the capacity, institutional capacity building, you need the environment where the private sector investment comes in to scaling and initiate a lot of interesting things. And that's how I see it. It's happening in Asia right now. And some of the governments really like this happen, but they don't want to. They don't know how. Technically, they can't dictate how the growth pathways should be. But the concern I think we have shared in the Asian Development Bank. By the way, we work both together with the government, but also private sector clientele. What we really have what we have common is we want to generate the benefit of the utilization of digital technology in the hands of the millions of smallholder farmers. Like you're rightly mentioning, Gigi, there are not many really. Some of them are that the fast come sort of like an entrepreneurial people just doing a fantastic job. And our job as a public sector supporting the government is to pick some of the promising budding sort of enterprises that would benefit directly for the smallholder farmers. We want to bring them into a little bit more bigger scale. That's what the most of our agribusiness investment is all about. Now, going back to the multi-sector dimension of that, precisely because of that, if you have that sort of environmental social goals, you can't really have only one ministry draft the strategy or that the investment plan, unless that the very strong leadership comes from a certain countries that is just, okay, we're going to digitize this all first, and then we'll see how it's going to be utilized. So it's not going to happen. And also the similar sort of the concern, well, the challenge is that you have to bring all the private sectors come along. You can't really do this. I think I have a strong belief on what the private sector should be playing a role in this game, but there has to be a multitude of all this private sector investment still have to flourish. That services have to evolve, not the technology itself, but the application to the agribusiness. For example, the production precision agriculture advisory, meeting getting all those millions of farmers, smallholder farmers onto the actual marketing, the finding that the buyers and sellers at the price discovery cost is just so enormous still in Asia. That simple thing like that still, it's not really happening. So it's not really like a restrictive policy that is required. It's more of an environment encouraging a lot more innovation to flourish, upscaling. That's something that is required. And then comes to the Gerald's point, last point about this little bit of this, that the privacy data governance, that issue comes in. And maybe I'll comment on that. I'll let that other wonderful speakers to talk their points first, and I'll come back to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michiko. And just to remind everyone, this is a really informal session, and everyone can react, to the inputs of our discussants. And one of the things that resonates to me is really the role of the private sector, right? We do know that the government cannot do it all. Otherwise, it's gonna be so much burden on the government. So from the perspective of somebody who works very closely with the private sector, Whaley, maybe you can share a little bit about Grow Asia, and what you are doing and what are your major challenges, because working with the private sector, as Michiko was saying, there's so many players in the space of digital for agriculture. And, we can't possibly be forwarding all of them, right? We also need to be very choosy in terms of who gets there in with working with governments, right? And is the private sector the same, or is it really just, you know, kind of like, what kind of orchestration, what kind of capacity building do we also need, you know, and what is Grow Asia's role in doing that? Yeah.
Thanks, Gigi. I can speak a bit to this multi-stakeholder collaboration piece. I mean, as Michiko said, Gerard was first out the gate, so he got that point first on the head. I couldn't agree more that multi-stakeholder collaboration is absolutely key. Digitization and digitalization in the ag sector cannot happen in either the private or public sector alone. I think from Grow Asia's perspective as a multi-stakeholder platform focused on Southeast Asia, that we basically build partnerships at the national and regional level to broker public-private partnerships, essentially between private sector, public sector, but development agencies, as well as civil society and farmers organizations, with the big picture goal of cultivating a more inclusive, resilient, and sustainable food system. So with that in mind, I think one key factor for us is the role of the enabling environment. And I think even in that, the private sector and public sector both have their unique roles to play. I think that in areas such as like e-extension services, where ministries of agriculture can be digitalizing their agriculture extension services as a way to build momentum for farmer behavior change, to gather data points on farmer behavior change, that can help startups, for example, who are also trying to get into the space. The data piece that Gerard alluded to, I won't dig into too much, but I think the capacity that research institutes have, national research institutes have, is a level of expertise that we cannot expect, for example, startups and technology companies to be able to replicate, because agriculture is a complex, very, very complex industry. And then we also see other factors like access to digital payments, digital lending, regulations that can help expand rural mobile coverage, the potential of government funding to de-risk private sector investments. These are all key areas, I think, for the public sector to take the lead. And underlying all this is, you know, really perhaps a very obvious, but we don't always say it, smallholder farmers are not very profitable customer base for most agribusinesses. If they were, I don't think we would need so many webinars on how to help farmers. And so because that's the case, you know, some of what Grow Asia does is really trying to figure out what's the business model, trying to figure out what's the business case for agribusinesses to be addressing smallholders as customers, but at the same time, make sure that we help to steer them and keep them on point, that farmer livelihoods, improve sustainability, remain at the center, right? Because we also don't want to just kind of let it be a free for all either. But so back to the role of the enabling environment piece, I've seen, you know, in Singapore, for example, we have and I used to work for the Singapore government before Grow Asia. The government takes quite an active role in developing new industries, such as, you know, agri-tech or food tech, for example, within the startup space. But then they also have very active programs in place to encourage ecosystem players like accelerators, incubators, to also be working closely together with government. And so I think this enabling environment piece, those pieces that I mentioned before are areas where the government really needs to take the lead. But when it comes to creating partnerships between all these different players, I think actually private and public sector both have a role to play there. That's my not so short answer to the question.
No, this is actually very perfect, you know, and it drives us to the point that, you know, I mean, Gerard, Michiko, and Wei Li, you know, you all talked about ecosystem, right? Ecosystem building, orchestration of the relationships. You know, it's easier said than done, as we all know, because all of these relationships, you know, are unless there is a business case of working together, it can easily fall apart. And I think that's the key there. You know, you mentioned something about business modeling, and that's really, in at least in our experience, it makes or breaks, you know, that relationship. If one organization or one entity doesn't see that value from the perspective of their own interests, then that particular partnership is not going to happen. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. And to complicate it further, okay, now, so assuming we can get all these stakeholders together, there is some semblance of policies and direction. What are really the challenges of getting these policies implemented? And I think that's also key, because you can't just put out a policy and not think about how you're going to implement it. And I'm interested in getting a reaction from you, Jitendra, as we know that you have this field pulse, the strong field pulse from your work. Are there anything in particular in the Asia region that stands out to you as a challenge that isn't much of a challenge perhaps in Africa, or maybe let's say Latin America, or are these challenges more or less global in nature? Can you share us your thoughts about this? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Gigi. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. Yeah, when we talk about digitalization in agriculture, it's a bit, very big topic. And I always think we should discuss from the very beginning about digitalization of the economy. Yeah, that affects all sectors. Because when you talk about digitalization of agriculture alone or in isolation, then we are always in a sticky path, because digitalization of the overall economy that defines in a whole way to different sectors, that may be in banking, that may be in other parts of the other sections of the economy. And if we compare, take the case of Japan and take the case of Nepal or India. So, and even in India, within India, if you take the case of Haryana or Punjab and go to Bihar and West Bengal, the cases are different. Yeah, so that we need to look the picture in totality. That's the first thing we all need to look at. How is the infrastructure that we need for agricultural digitalization? Let's take the simple case of Bihar, because what you see is how influential is the program of the government. Yeah, program of the government in agriculture. First thing we need to see, okay, is it, do you have electricity? Do you have, overall, a smooth supply of internet? And these all things, these are all still in the basic part. Yeah. If you see the case of farmers having mobile phone, I'm happy. Okay, farmers are having mobile phones now. But how many of farmers in Bihar uses this ICT information to have, to apply their decisions in agriculture? I went through and I met almost 300 women farmers in the village, in different focus group discussions. And I found that only, 7 women are using that one. Yeah, and it was the case of 2017, a bit back, but I think it is improving. But it's still, we need to see whether those infrastructure is there or not, and how the farmers can use that one. Are they capable of using that one? This human aspect was almost, said by Gerard and also Michiko. I can say that human capital aspect should also be developed in that one, because unless they can tap the resources, they have resources over there, in the public domain, but they are not capable enough to capture those things and use that for their own benefit. That's the major issue, what I see in many of the underdeveloped part of Nepal, India, Bangladesh, and other parts of the world also. Yeah, that's the first thing. And the second is when you talk about integration all the time, because when you talk about digital thing, we have the aspects of electrification, how fast, even here where I'm staying now in Kalimpong, every day in the rainy season, 6 hours of blackout is also common. So almost 6 hours every day, you will not have electricity. Yeah, and in case of internet, I buy almost 12 gigabyte per day just to have a small meeting like this. We all know it doesn't take 12 gigabyte, but after just 2 hours, they will say, okay, your 50% of gigabyte is already gone. And these are the things. I'm not saying these are, this is only I'm passing, but we need to be careful on how is the governance system, how is our regulatory framework to capture these all business things. The private sector works when the government provides the environment, and this regulatory framework and the good governance, if we are missing on that one, whatever investment we make on the farming sector, that is not going to pay for us. I can see, CGIR, it is working in Nepal almost like, 50 years now. But if you see, what is the achievement in the agricultural sector? We were, exporting few things long before, but now we are importing even the cereals. Yeah. So that's why, good governance and complete, basic regulatory framework is very important. And that gives the ethics to the private sector also. Whatever ethics the government sector has, that definitely affect the private sector. If the government is corrupt, private sector stimulates that one because they can play with that. That's what I observe. Yeah, sorry to say, but this is what we usually need to act upon. We need to act on these 3-4 issues which are really critical. Whether the regulatory framework is really working or not, that guides the private sector, because private sector always aims for the investment and profit. And that's the same for the farmers. Yeah, I can see digitalization in agriculture is very important for all sustainable development goals, like climate action, like poverty reduction, and farmers' participation, equity, and these things. But do we have those all infrastructure in place or not? That's the first question. Do we have capacity for implementing those things or not? Or in some cases, we have the players like not only government and the private sector, we have non-governmental sector also. That is one of the very crucial in poor countries like Nepal, Bangladesh, where, non-governmental sector is so powerful, they can push the policy, inside or outside. I can say both. So not only this, public and private, but in between we have non-govs that are also working. We have to be very careful in the market integration on that. So if you see the case, many of these programs are now supply driven. We need to change that one. Digitalization should come as a demand driven from the farmer side. And how do we make that one? That's a big question, and that's the solution also. If we address the question very well, we're really getting some solution. Because rather than just, I can see ICT was taken by CCAPS also in one of the projects in CGIR. But it was launched in Bihar, it was launched in Haryana, it was launched in Nepal and also in Bangladesh. But after some time, the farmers doesn't know that exists in that project, because that was, that came into the project, that was given, and some of the, international scientists and local scientists like us, we all work together. But after the project is over, the farmer lost that. So that's why we need to have some, strong cooperation between private and public sector. And also we need to bring that one to bridge that some of the non-governmental sectors that can be national and international. And that sort of cooperation building is very essential to strengthen the farmer, strengthen our institutions, and also achieve some good governance in both public and private sector. Public is very essential because that is reflected in the private sector also. Because if public sector is corrupt, there is no way a private sector can be clean. There's no way I can see like that. So these are the thoughts, let's go on, but let me stop right now here. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much, Jitendra, and with what you were saying, there's really a loop going back into this conversation, right? And I think the common ground that we are all talking about is really that cooperation, is very important. And the role of the government to foster that cooperation through regulations, through policies, through the enabling framework is very, very important, and that is not an easy feat, for a lot of governments to take on, it's like, being your partner, the leader, to do all these partnerships together. And as you guys had mentioned, there is always sometimes a clashing priorities too between all of these players. Now, to put that in a perspective of a case, we'd love to hear from you, John, the story of PNG. And what criteria holds a little bit of a more compelling case for you to roll out a national D4Ag strategy? Jitendra was talking about infrastructure, if it's not there, electrification, if it's not there, So in your case, how did you get all these pieces together? And perhaps you can share a little bit about how you had used FAO Agriculture's framework. John, can we hear from you?
Thank you, Gigi. Before, I'd like to say that we are excited to be part of this dialogue, especially when PNG is venturing into the e-agriculture space and the digital transformation space. Let me say briefly why this is significant to us and why we are excited about this. Firstly, we see this as a union or partnership of two very significant sectors in Papua New Guinea. The agriculture takes up about 90%, is practiced by about 90% of the population. And ICT is seen by the government as the potential to transform the country in terms of economy and all that. And agriculture is one of the cases that we can use. It is also significant, and that is why one of the reasons why the partnership between the departments, the different departments like the Department of Agriculture, Department of ICT, the NICTA, the regulator, and also FAO and IT were able to assist us was that there was a passion and there was a belief that we felt that our local farmers, smallholder farmers, deserve an international audience for their products or produce. We felt that our smallholders could be more exposed widely on the international stage. And that is one of the reasons that pushed the partnership at the beginning of the formulation of the e-strategy for the country. Also, we come back to infrastructure, and the speakers, especially Jitendra and the others, were rightly saying that infrastructure is one of the major issues or problems that we, and in Papua New Guinea especially, where we have a landscape that is really rugged, mountainous and terrain, we have a problem where we cannot easily roll out our telco infrastructure into the rural areas, and that's where most of the population live. So creating affordable ICT services in the rural areas to us is a complex challenge. It is that last mile of communication infrastructure that we see as high cost and the private sector sees as a high level of capital and operating expenses that has a low return of income to them. And that is a major challenge to us. Also, the other challenges that we face is the digital literacy of the population, especially when we talk about farmers. Most of them live in the rural areas. So how do they take up digital agriculture or e-agriculture when most of them, their skill level or the literacy level is still at that stage where we need to, more training needs to be pushed out to the farmers. And the other the other area is the content. The content, Papua New Guinea is a unique country that has about 800 different languages. And to roll out e-agriculture or any other, not only agriculture, but any other digital transformation is a challenge to us. How do we put that content into 800 different languages? Or if we have a main language that's called Tok Pisin, how do we translate that into Tok Pisin and then translate that into that different 800 languages again? So those are some of the challenges that we face. But otherwise, the 2018 e-agriculture strategy has really, as Gerard pointed out, has really brought about some exciting synergies within the government and the private, not the private sector, but the donor partners that we have, and the small work that we have done in Jiwaka province, the Eastern Highlands province, has really garnered up interest for ICT in agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. That's really very insightful, because you had mentioned digital literacy, you mentioned private capital, and as we know, there are many different challenges, including role of women, role of local governments, and all of this has to trickle down. Now I want to look back on the e-agriculture framework, So how can this framework that helped you in PNG, and maybe this is a more question for Gerard, how can governments, and even those who are interested, in D4Ag scaling and sustainability, how can we all tap into the e-agriculture FAO's framework, and how did you just tell us a little bit of a story how that went, how you fostered the use of that, with PNG? Yeah.
Well, the inception of why we need the strategy came about around 10 years ago, because we were working on several projects and we saw a lot of IFIs and other UN agencies working on different projects. And there was an IT component, or let's say ICT component of every project. So let's say in Afghanistan, one IFI goes in and develop a MIS system, and then the project is for 5 years. And then after 5 years, you go and ask, hey, what happened to the MIS system? They say, yes, that person you trained is now moved to the other project, and the hardware that you bought is sitting in the corner, And then another IFI comes with their new project for water, and they end up developing the exact same system. And we were also culprits. I mean, we were also doing the same thing, So then we said, come on, I think now we have a mature idea of what works, what doesn't work. And, so there should be like a little bit of coherence. And one of the issues was that as FAO, our line ministry was the Ministry of Agriculture. And it was very clear that this is, again, going back to my old mantra, it's a multi-stakeholder, So we wanted to also tap into the ICT ministry, and that's where we linked up with ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, because their line ministry is with the Ministry of Communication, Ministry of ICT, and also with the telecom regulator and private sectors. So together we developed this e-agriculture strategy, which kind of first takes into consideration what does your country wants to achieve in terms of its agricultural goals, vision. My country wants to double wheat production in 4 years, or double farmers' income. Okay, fine. What are the challenges? Then you have your big laundry list of challenges. Then you try to group what challenges can be met with digital, what challenges can be met with ICT, because ICT is not a silver bullet. There are certain things where it can make a change, certain things, you have to find another. And then you try to see, to make this solution work, who should be the lead stakeholder, who should be the supporting stakeholder, what are the resources needed? Because investment is crucial, like Michiko was saying. We can all have a nice strategy. It's a paper tiger. If you don't have money, if you don't have the resources, then it's going to gather dust in your ministry shelf. So we need to also see where the resources are coming. And all these things, and then you develop an action plan and what are the frameworks needed to implement a particular solution and all those things. And then you set up a national e-agriculture task force, which kind of oversees these developments and kind of updates. Because remember, once you develop a digital for agriculture strategy for any country, that strategy is going to be obsolete in a month's time, in 2 months' time, because digital things move faster. So this thing should be a kind of not cast in stone. It should be very flexible to adjust and move and other things, and be able to do that. Now, one of the things that we realized is that when we talk about digital for agriculture, the capacity of people in the country to understand the complexities of this is very limited. I mean, this is the thing, example I say, I mean, there used to be calls that come to us from some country offices saying, can you buy us 2 drones? Because probably the director went to a nice workshop where they flew some drones and showed some very impressive presentation. So he comes and says, can you buy us 2 drones? We say, fine, we can go to the market and buy 2 drones, but what are you going to do with that? No, we'll fly it and identify the pest. I mean, it doesn't work that way. You need to have a whole ecosystem, So we said, okay, there's a need for a lot of capacity. So whenever we engage with the countries to develop the strategy, we try to increase the time needed to develop the strategy, because the strategy is not the end product. It's not the end goal. It's just one of the end goals. The overall goal is to develop the capacity of the people in the ministry to understand what is digitization. And the first thing people say is, can you develop an app? So we need to bring them from that level to a much more realistic level on why you need the tab. And by the way, if you develop an app, you need to have a whole team to keep on updating it every time Android or your iOS or whoever releases a new update. So all these things, capacity will be developed. And secondly, whenever we go into countries to develop this, we bring in the Ministry of ICT, we bring in the Ministry of Agriculture. And this matchmaking is very difficult. And it's a very sensitive issue, because the agriculture people say that, agriculture is complex, you ICT people don't understand anything. ICT people tell us, no, you tell us and we'll write a few lines of code and your problem will be solved. So the first 2 days is very sensitive. You need to, it's kind of like a UN Security Council meeting. You need to, and once you are able to get past that and people are able to appreciate the beauty and the complexity in each other's domain, then the magic happens. Then they're able to, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the same country, or it's even the same province. In some countries, you have to do it at the province or the state level, not at the country level. And then you're able to even mobilize resources. I mean, again, I'm going to with the example of PNG, because John is here and he can tell that I'm lying in case if I do. The telecom regulators in most countries sits on something called as the TDF, or the Telecom Development Fund, or the USO funds, Universal Service Obligation. So this could be anywhere between 1 to 5% of the gross income of most mobile operators, which goes into a kitty, which should be used to develop what we call it as basic services, connectivity and digital literacy and other things. That has not been used for agriculture in almost all of the countries, because one is they didn't know that it could be used. Secondly, no one approached them. There was no part. So once you're able to do that, and that's a huge amount of money sitting in countries. So you don't need external funding agencies to help countries develop some basic digital agriculture services. So if you're able to do the networking and make sure that the marriages inside the countries happen in the right way, then they'll be able to do things and be able to, develop their own services and be able to update it. Capacity development across the board. We keep talking about farmers need capacity. It's the people in the ministry also who need capacity to understand all these things. What we find is that one particular director or one minister in some cases is interested in D4 Ag, and they say, let's come and do it. But the people at the second, third, fourth level just do it just because their boss told them to do it, where they don't understand most of these things. So we need to develop this end-to-end capacity when you're talking about digital and be able to do it. And that's something that we were able to do it in PNG. And as you heard from John, there's been a lot of good learnings and definitely things that can be built on that. Thank you.
Michiko, you have your hand up. You know, we'd be very interested to hear from you. Your reaction, yeah.
No, this thanks. I mean, I'm just commenting from the perspective of people who actually invest in agriculture, agribusiness, including farmers. You know, this all the homeworks. I mean, the partnership we talk about, it's not about the conference or don't even chit chat. It's not about the sign some paper that you sign on. Actually, people will coming together with this, you know, combined business interest is there to do this one thing. Private sector used to. I mean, it's that. Whaley's many of your member companies long time ago it came in as a sort of task force, what is like a sort of a campaign kind of thing. But now there's a lot of serious concerned investors who would really wants to secure that the future supply of the primary crops. That's why they want to invest in a smallholder agriculture, and also the link that to the sustainable value chain. And in the similar manner, the way we want to make all this business cases for everybody is that for the case of the digital agriculture service providers is they need to scale. Yes, Whaley, you're right. Nobody sees us as smallholder agriculture as a potential lucrative businesses. But what if we can provide the services at the scale of 2 million, 3 million, 5 million farmers as a user that pays for $1 a month or something? I mean, that doesn't satisfy many of the big companies, but some of the smallholder startups that they will love it. So the way we would do it is, for example, they do a lot in India now, is that we do matchmaking with the government. It's sort of like, it's a form of the government training in a sense that it's, you know, there's a services like this, that's going to serve for this benefit of for the production or access to market. And we do that, the things called the AgTech marketplace to do the matchmaking and so that to convince the farmers to try this out. And the government finance the try-out cost portion and also capacity building. They actually make use of it and benefit from it and evaluate whether or not this you want to do this or you want to move on to the other services or something like that. So we study with that, and startup companies who expect to have the certain market shares in the services that they really appreciate it. So in a nutshell, we have to build the business cases of the partnership. We can't really get together very often for the years to come to build the transport of food system just out of curiosity to discuss about it. Come on, no, it's not going to be like that. Farmer says it all from the beginning. So what's in it for me? Do I get more benefit out of this? And oftentimes we work many times with the farmers users groups or the farmer groups. Not all of them will show up. Only the fraction of people who's entrepreneurial and wants to try new things, they come out. And the rest just is watching those, you know, first rail people who try it out and say, oh, this is good, or but the risk is that, or just it costs so much so that I can't do that, or that kind of sort of spreading of this network within the farming community. That's what we're doing. So Gigi, we are in a very different era now. Just even if we invest in the same kind of things, infrastructure, finance, agriculture, and whatnot, but we doing all, we have to think about everybody's business case. Does it make any business sense to people to come in to do this? And that digital agriculture can, you know, change the games by reducing the cost of doing a lot of things, information sharing or finding, you know, traders and all this inputs, understanding the predictive sort of like what's going to happen the next week. So you do this or you not to do that. So that talks, and you know, cost of transaction is going to be much less to do this exercise with 1 million farmers. So that's the high expectation that we have. But with that, we want to make a business cases so that it's a very labor intensive work, but eventually we want to make it as a norm for everybody to think about in that way. So we're transforming our way of thinking. We're transforming a way of our partner governments thinking. In fact, a lot of them are doing already with that. And thanks to all those innovative people in the industry. I'll stop here. Thanks.
Thanks, Michiko. Wei Li, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to one of Gerard's points where he was talking about the drone situation. We have a partner for a big MNC who talks about how cocoa farmers in the field have a motorcycle that they were given as a development project. They want a mechanic to fix the motorcycle, but each new partner that comes wants to send a helicopter. And now I think the new partners want to send drones. And all that is to say that I don't think like if we put ourselves in the farmer perspective, we don't necessarily need an app, blockchain, or machine learning as a solution to smallholder farmer problems. I think that when we've done our mapping of what technologies farmers are actually using, more farmers are using Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp to access crop-specific, region-specific farmer groups where they get advice, they sell things. There's actually a wealth of data there that is waiting to be kind of analyzed in the same way that marketing companies selling cereal would analyze who watches their cereal videos. We could be analyzing who's watching these videos where farmers are giving advice and learn a lot from them, actually. So all that is to say that we don't necessarily need the very top line technology to solve some of the problems that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to very strongly agree to that, because I just got some sort of like a request to do TikTok videos for farmers. So I was like, okay, at first I was like, TikTok videos, but then that's how they learn. That's what they were saying in that particular country. I will not name the country, but it's quite an interesting also a point that you made about data, okay? And I think that as far as data is concerned, this is perhaps one of the entry points where we can be more mindful or more intentional about regional cooperation, because data will allow us to see what works and what doesn't work. So as a last question, because we're running out of time, perhaps, we can look back to you, Jitendra, and perhaps some of your thoughts, on how to foster better regional cooperation in Asia would actually be very helpful. Yeah.
If you see the case of Asia, we have to be, thinking about how to transfer some of the digital technologies from, high-tech Asia to the lower one, because Asia is, some of the countries are at the high level of digitalization, while others are not. So first thing is, how to transfer that one at the scalable level to the others. That's the first thing. And to scale that one, what we have to think is like, we need to think at regional level for the technology transfer, but technology applications should be taken at the local level. And what I agree with Michiko is like, we have to think about the business case. Yeah, business case is very important in all the things at the macro level as well as at the local level. If you see the case of, simple case, what I saw in Haryana and Punjab of India, the rental market of laser land labeling, and also the zero tillage machine and those machines. And also, some of the service providers are just like, they are the like extension agents, because they tell the farmers, what to grow, how to grow, and what are the, prospects and those things. That's why we need to look at, these small business cases, not the big one when we start with the small farmers, because they want to have something, they don't want to buy, they want to just rent it. Because buying a big laser land labeling is a big cost for a farmer. But when he uses with the service provider, he will buy the service in a very small amount of money. And the same is for the precision agriculture. We have the same, same experience in Haryana, Punjab, and other parts of India. So when we talk about the regional level, we have to also link that one at the local, small business level and make some projects for that one. So we work directly with the farmers and make the small business cases, okay, how it is profitable to the farmers and also profitable to those who provide service to the farmers. Because not government can provide, very block level or small village level informations to the farmers, because that is very costly for the government. But if the service providers from the same area can work on that one, and we make the linkage, from the very, top level to the bottom one, then it will be easier for the farmers to go to and have access to those service providers. And for service providers also, it is at least profitable to run the business. So we have to see those small business cases, and that makes the sense, And we have two examples from CIMIT or SICAPS, that one is like laser land labeling promotion, And also the other one is like turbo happy seeder. Turbo happy seeder is like, that will reduce the burning of, farm residues at the farm, and all that helps the climate action or GHG mitigation from agriculture. And in the meantime, that help reduce, the input misuse, and farmers benefit or net benefit is increasing. So that technology promotion is like not only, in digital, every promotion, like we can say this precision agriculture, laser labeling, and other things. We need to see how we can make the, the philosophy or the project level thinking is at regional level. But when we implement and work with the farmers, we have to think at the local level, and we have to develop the local service providers, local farmers capacity, local extension agents, because otherwise there is no way we can promote the farmers capacity. As John has said, farmers doesn't know how to use that one. Whatever regional level policy you have, unless you work with the farmers, how to handle the small project, how to look at the message in your mobile phone, and how to interpret that one in the real life situation. Yeah, those are the things we need to very make real, because we need to see countries are at the different levels of digitalization. We can't say Singapore and Nepal together, because Singapore is at highest level, whereas the Nepal is at the lowest level. So we need to look at these diversities of the different countries and their level of technological development at the agriculture, and develop the projects in a way. But we need to work and act with the farmers at the small level and the village level, the small business case. I may agree or disagree with Michiko, but I am always thinking about we have to look at the village level, make the small business cases where the farmers are willing to participate. If there are big business cases, small farmers, they are afraid of those things. Oh, what is this? What is going on? Are we going to lose all our land, or are we going to lose everything at the big business houses? That happens in India. What happened when this digital things came in? There was a big demonstrations by the farmers. They were all saying, okay, if the big business houses come to our village, we may lose our land. And that information went around, and finally those all three national laws, which was passed by the parliament, but it has to be taken out. So that's what we need to have: local level capacity building, understanding, and also we need to take confidence of the local farmers for all business cases. That's the one thing we need to be careful while designing the regional policy. Why sometimes regional policy fails at the local level. They are very beautiful and high sounding at the highest level, but at the farmers level, we can't convince them, because they're afraid of these very big things at once. That should be gradual, not at once, I should say. So that we need to think on how to make these small things at a gradual level. Yeah, that's what my experience. Thank you, Gigi.
Thank you so much, Jitendra. Unfortunately, our time together has come to a close, and this is really, really very important. I wish we all had more time together, because there's so much to unpack in this conversation. But overall, I think what we have said was that cooperation is very important. Orchestration of the different stakeholders is important. It's not all about the government taking everything, on their shoulders. Capacity building and making sure that the voices of the farmers are heard is very important, to make sure we're rooted, and we're very, we're very aware of what can be done and what cannot be done. Also, leveraging on investments and capitalization already made is very important as well, so that we're not always just creating and influencing, the stakeholders to put in more capital, when in fact, a lot of the things that we need are probably already there. Okay, so on behalf of the Digital Agri Hub and the ADBI, I'd like to thank our discussants today. Thank you for your active participation. And could you please, just look at your chat box, because there are a lot of questions that are farmed out. If you could help answer them, that would be really, really be great. And while we don't have all the answers, we hope that we have given you an insight on the complex understanding and undertaking of developing D4Ag policies, the factors that should be considered, and the key stakeholders who should be involved. Thank you very much. And over to you, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Gigi, for that wonderful summary, and thank you to all our speakers for your contributions in that very lively and insightful and rich discussion. As Gigi said, yes, if you can stay and continue to interact by answering the Q&A questions, although I feel that most of them have been answered now, or just stay for our session and interact in the chat. I hope everyone found that discussion as insightful as I did, and please do share your takeaways in the chat box, what you've learned, reflecting on what you shared you wanted to learn at the beginning of the session. So we're going to swiftly move on to session 2, and it's my pleasure to introduce session 2 moderator Lakshmi Iyer, also from the Dgroups Foundation, and she will introduce the speakers. Thank you very much and welcome, Lakshmi.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you so much to panelists from session 1 and Gigi for moderating that great session. Really looking forward to session number 2. Who work across India, Vietnam, as well as Indonesia. And I'm looking forward to introducing you to them now. So I'll be joined by Arjun Goyal, Director of Development and Programs at Cropin Technology Solutions BV. Hi, Arjun.
Hi.
Arjun is presently the Director of Development at Cropin Technologies, which is an agri-tech business working with UN agencies and multilateral institutions, governments, and foundations. He's based out of The Hague in Netherlands, and he's a former UNDP officer, having worked with the agency for over 10 years. So it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, same here.
We will also be joined by Mr. Tran Quang Deng. He's the Director General, Institute for Policy and Strategy for Agriculture and Rural Development, Vietnam. Hello, Mr. Deng. Thank you for joining. The Institute for Policy and Strategy for Agriculture and Rural Development, IPSARD, is a major think tank of the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in the field of policy and strategy within the ag sector in Vietnam. Thang has a PhD in agricultural economics and has been working in the ag sector for over 20 years. Thanks for joining. And we'll also be joined by Pamitra Wineka, the founder and CEO of Tani Hub Group in Indonesia. Pamitra is the co-founder and president of Tani Hub Group, which operates e-commerce platform Tani Hub, a peer-to-peer lending platform, Tani Fund, and a supply chain management platform, Tani Supply. Pamitra is also the founding partner of Akulaku, a fintech lending platform in Southeast Asia. And prior to delving into the tech world, Pamitra worked at the World Bank as a researcher in microfinance and holds two degrees, one in mathematics and one in economics. Welcome to all of our panelists today. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Taking a page from session 1, we know that achieving sustainability and scale are challenging aims when it comes to digitalization for agriculture. It's vital to learn from each other. What we learned from session 1 is that cooperation is really key, and it's vital to learn from each other and identify best practices, enabling environment factors from the government side, and really try and aim to understand what digital ag solution providers are looking for in order to scale and make these solutions as inclusive and as user-friendly as possible for smallholder farmers, as effective as possible. Really what we're aiming to do today in this session is to explore the factors, the enabling environment factors, as they contribute and hinder progress and growth among D for Ag solution providers, and try and share an understanding of what some of the governments are doing to support digitalization. And we'll be really honing in on India, Vietnam, and Indonesia to try and understand how these geographies and each of the panelists, organizations, or institutes plays a role in achieving sustainability and scale of digitalization for agriculture. So I'd like to actually turn to India first and talk a little bit about the fact that India is building a national digital agricultural ecosystem. And we talked a lot about ecosystem during session number 1. And I'd like to focus just a few minutes on this idea that, you know, the Indian government is building this ecosystem in order to elevate the agricultural sector and improve the welfare and income of farmers. And that underlying this framework is this idea of an agri-stack, which is a unifying platform where multiple solution providers would be able to provide digital ag services to smallholder farmers. And I'm just wondering if I could take a minute before Arjun presents his slide deck on crop-in solutions, if you could just take a moment to comment on AgriStack and how AgriStack as a framework could potentially support some of the solutions that crop-in is actually working on. So I'll turn it over to you, Arjun, to potentially talk about the long-term planning surrounding AgriStack and what some of these ag service providers have signed on to do with AgriStack in India.
Yeah, thank you, Lakshmi. And it's an honor and privilege to be amongst esteemed panelists. Also, thank you to Digital Agri Hub and ADBI for inviting Crop-in to be a part of this panel and sharing our views. So just to start with the question, Lakshmi, that you have thrown at me, AgriStack it comes under the overall architecture of IDEA, which is India Digital Ecosystem Architecture. And Indian government has already been working on many digital services or information services for the farmers over the past 15 or 2 or 3 decades. It also includes digitization of the land records, certain services like Kisan Suvidha, Soil Health Card. You have sharing of climate information services to smallholder farmers. So many information services and digitization of land records, etc., has always been happening. Government also came up with policy of national e-commerce marketplace. It's a marketplace platform where commodity trading can happen. So IDEA is kind of a culmination of all the efforts which are ongoing in center at the state. And as you know, agriculture in India is a state subject. And the production supply of commodities under concurrent list, the central government has power over the state government. So managing such a complex ecosystem of where there is sharing of power and so many digital services and information services which are there on the ground. So IDEA comes as an overall architecture, and AgriStack is a component within the IDEA architecture, where the farmers, the end objective is to improve the precision agriculture for the smallholder farmers so that they know when to sow the seed, which kind of seeds to be sown, when is the time for harvest, what kind of irrigation practices should be followed, where is the market, what kind of prices the farmers can get. So overall, it's like a culmination of all the activities that is happening in Indian ecosystem by the governments, both at the state level and the central government level.
Thank you so much. It's such a really interesting case, isn't it, that India is putting this together. I wonder if you could comment a little bit about Crop-in now, and perhaps we go to your prepared slide deck to talk a little bit about the solutions that Crop-in is providing under that gamut, under that ecosystem that we're talking about with respect to the Indian government.
So thank you so much again. I'm Arjun. I'm Director of Development Programs and Crop and Technology. I lead the overall development sector business, that is engagements with the development sector, and it also includes projects with the foreign governments and Indian government as well. Cropin is a 13-year-old institution which is providing digital solutions for smallholder farmers, agribusinesses, seeds, and fertilizers. And we have a complete ecosystem approach, that is end-to-end digitalization, not going by stack or in silos, provide complete digital capabilities right from the pre-harvest level to the post-harvest level. Till date, we have curated around 5 solutions. If I can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, curated over 5 solutions: smart farms, smart risk, smart warehouse, and smart sales, and e-commerce platform, which is called marketplace, root trace capabilities to provide end-to-end digitalization capabilities. Here, precisely, till date, we have reached about 7 million farmers, digitized over 16 million acres of land, have crop signatures of around 388 crops. Precisely, we are leveraging technologies such as AI, ML now with the help of big data, combining 3 data approaches: the remote sensing data, the climate data, and the in-situ data, to provide digital services and service delivery for agribusinesses and smaller farmers. Thereby, we intend to increase the crop productivity, the farm productivity, better farm planning, better access to inputs and finances for smallholder farmers, so that overall the ecosystem for all the ecosystem players, whether it's the banking industry, whether it's the producers, and whether it's the buyers, they all come in together and interact on the digital platforms. Next slide, please. Presenting the suite of solutions that we have: smart farm, smart risk, smart ware, smart sales, and acre square. We have root trace as well, which provides complete traceability of the solution. Can I go to the next slide, please? Yeah, coming to what might be interesting for all the audience over here, and this goes from the conversation where Gerard left, is to find out the best practices, the best practices that we have, and we follow a complete ecosystem approach. Any solution or any program on any project that we build has an ecosystem approach, where you have buyers, you have farmer institutions and financial institutions, and we provide digital services and data services to all the stakeholders, coming as a kind of a funnel or coming as a focal point where all the ecosystem players interact with each other. There is more trust and there's more confidence within the value chain. And there is more better kind of value proposition for each of the components, such as buyers to interact with the farmers, farmers to interact with the financial institutions, and for the buyers and the financial institutions to have trust within each other to interact with smallholder farmers. One of the projects, few of the projects, this is our development sector approach, where we have divided our pillars into farm digitization, access to finance, and access to markets. To highlight some of the examples that we are doing today in the industry is the JEF and the EFAD project that we are doing in Africa. In India, we are engaged with the World Bank Johar project, where we are providing pest and disease alerts and services to smallholder farmers. We are working with government of Punjab to digitize 20,000 acres of land and take the farm produce to the market, build a market platform, and then get exporters to buy those farm produce. We are working with government of Mizoram, Department of Agriculture over there, again deploying remote sensing technologies to find out specific agronomy issues on the farm site, such as pest and disease, water stress, crop stress, and then build around advisors around that. The next slide, please. Yeah, one of the very interesting approach that we have inside Cropin is a 4-step process that we deploy for site-specific and region-specific solutions. What we focus on having digital technologies and software and both hardware capabilities is to collect the data from the ground. This is divided into in-situ climate data and the remote sensing data. With the help of this data, we kind of do data analysis, data modeling, simulation models to identify very specific issues around agronomy, access to inputs, access to finance, access to credit issues, and market issues, where the market is broken for smallholder farmers, and can you build in solutions? And there we come to a third step, is designing the entire services for the smaller farmers. This is a very, very participatory approach. We believe that we need to have, and we do it already with governments, with multilateral institutions, with country missions out there, like with EFART, we work with all the country mission offices, farmer institutions, have a complete participatory approach to know how a service delivery has to be designed. So solution is there. We come to the fourth part, that is complete service delivery design. This is very important. And as one of the speakers in the last panel highlighted, the trust and faith with the farmers is very, very important. There is always a question, if you give an advisory A, and if that fails, who's going to bear the burden of the failures, right? So for that, a lot of trust and faith is required at the grassroots level to actually make these digital technology and services produce results for smallholder farmers. And this is what we feel in the value chain. This has been the crack for Cropin, that going to the micro level, that the farm site level, working across with institutions at the grassroots level, and then building up solutions over there, complete service delivery model. And that, I think, has been a factor for us success till date, for what we have got recognition. Once we have a farm sites solution, then it's like building up a complete region specific solution with the help of remote sensing technology. So when you have a weed problem or a pest problem, and we capture it through a camera, with the help of remote sensing capabilities, you can find out the extent of damage that is done on the ground. The same thing, so our approach with 3 sets of data is kind of a co-verification and co-validation, and we deploy this right from the start of data capturing to data analysis to service design, as well as the service delivery. The next slide, please. Yeah, I think a few of the challenges that we face is, the presence of digital assets on the ground. Just to highlight, in Bihar, there is enough electricity, there is enough internet connectivity these days. But yes, there is definitely challenge of smartphone access on the at the grassroots level. Also the capacity building, the farmers, the farmer institutions, and it's like the receptivity over how digital technology can play a role in their lives. I would just like to highlight that the movement towards digital agriculture is because we believe, and everyone believes, there is a better output out of this. There is better farm productivity. The cost of service is going to go down. That's why you see digital agriculture and acceptance of digital agriculture within the governments and at the grassroots level also. So anything that we do has to revolve around farmers, and anything that revolves around farmers has to towards better access to incomes and credits. If a farmer feels, yes, by deploying a certain technology or a services, he's going to increase the income, or she's going to increase the income, then major part of the problem is solved. The second challenge is that working in silos, that few of the projects that we get or the programs that we get is only working on a small problem. So they ask, can you deploy AI technologies to have a sense of whether there is a better a crop yield or not? But having an end-to-end digitization approach is rather better, rather than having a very siloed approach. Many requests that we get from government departments is just to solve one problem, and in there we feel that the cost increases so much. To deploy a UAV just for having a crop yield does not make any sense. It needs to have a complete end-to-end approach. Then there is, the challenge that we find is, long-term sustainable partnerships, and common mandates. So every donor or every government comes up with their own mandate. And we feel that when we sit across a drawing table, there needs to be a common mandate, because what donor would like to do and what government would like to do is sometimes a lot of mismatch. So having a long-term sustainable partnership is very important. From where and how the farmers are going to pay. If they are not going to pay after the end of the program, then who takes up the responsibility, right? And there we feel that the ecosystem approach, where buyers and financial institutions are there, they're a very important key component to make the whole digital services sustainable for smallholder farmers. The last point is, having a very coherent policy on data monetization. Till date in India, also we are figuring it out under the IDEA framework and agri-tech architecture as to whether, what kind of consent is needed from the farmers to monetize their data. So we have a certain data. Can we take it to the banks? Who gives the permission? Does the bank gives the permission, or do we have to also take in farmers? If farmers are there, they are political institutions in itself, right? So, one of the speakers highlighted that it becomes a political issue. So this is where, we need a very coherent policy on data monetization, which includes very clear and crisp farmers' consent, because anything that becomes political, we will never have a solution out of that.
Thank you so much, Arjun, for that really informative presentation. There are so many things to pull from that, with respect to data-related insights and how we can leverage data to ensure that we're providing targeted solutions for the smallholder farmers that are on the ground facing the challenges that they're facing. Is an enormous set of challenges. I'd like to move to our esteemed speaker from Vietnam, please. Thang, would you like to share your slides with respect to what IPSARD is working on and how the government, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in Vietnam is working on digitalization of agriculture in Vietnam?
So, okay, thank you, Lasmi. So can you hear me? Okay, yeah, so go ahead, please. Let's enter, please. Okay, so thanks, Lasmi, for introduce. So my name is Thang. I'm the DG of the Institute of Policy and Strategy for Agriculture in Vietnam. The first thing very slightly, I would like to take the importance of the agriculture sector in Vietnam. You know that the agriculture in Vietnam plays very important roles. In here, you can see that the GDP of agriculture in Vietnam still account for nearly 15%, and more importantly, around more than 30 millions of labor still working in agriculture. And so the another things important indicators agriculture's contributes lastly on the export, with the total agriculture export value in last year in nearly 50 billion US dollar. So the very general things mentioned about the importance of agriculture. Next slide, please. And with the digital agriculture, the government of Vietnam is very concerned about that. And in-house the strategy, the government also invested. The digital is one of the very important solutions to improve the productivity, to improve the efficiency in-house economy, also in the agriculture sectors. And due to that, the government also have a different programs and the strategy. For example, here I try to list out some main strategy for digital transformation in Vietnam. The first one about the national digital transformation programs to 2025 and orientation to 2030. So in this strategy, the government impressed the important and point out different solutions to improve the digitals for the host economy. So in which agriculture is one of 8 priority area. Based on that, the Ministry of Agriculture is now developing the action plan for digitalize in agriculture sectors. And the second very important thing is the strategy for development of the e-governments. So, you know, the e-government is one of the 3 areas that Vietnam want to focus on: e-government, social digitalization, and the economic digitalization. That's why here is one of the important things. And the other very important strategy is the strategy for sustainable agriculture and rural development in 2021 and 2030 period, and the vision to 2050s. This is the very new strategy, and it's just approved by the Prime Minister. That is a big strategy for agriculture, and in which the strategy, the digital agriculture is one of the very important solution that. So under the big strategy, the government also issued the digitalized agriculture for the rural development, and in which they promote the smart village, try to improve the digitalized digitals and infrastructure, and try to improve the digital in transformation in the rural area, not only agriculture, also in the rural areas. And to support that, the Vietnam, we have different institutions in which the VIDA is for the Vietnam Digital Agriculture Association was launched to promote the digital in agriculture sector. Next slide, please. With the different strategy, Vietnam want to improve the digital agriculture in special, in particular, and in generally, we try to improve the digital for household economy of Vietnam. And the vision of Vietnam here, in the slide, you can see that the vision for Vietnam and also the vision for agriculture sector in terms of digitalization. And the vision for Vietnam up to 2030 can become one of the top 50 countries in terms of e-government, and the digitalized economy will contribute at least 30% for the GDP, and at least 20% for each sectors. And Vietnam want to reach and achieve on the top 30 countries with the informative developments, with the communication global index, and the top 35 country in terms of the global innovation index. And also the Vietnam also expect to at the top of 30 countries for the global communication index. For agriculture, Vietnam expected that the digital will be very important tool to improve the productivities, in which we expected that we will develop the high technology in agriculture. We stimulate smart and precision agriculture, and all the big data, digital data for agriculture will apply, and all the data in agriculture will be digitalized, especially for land, for crop system, weather, environment information, and we will provide for the all users. In terms of commerce, for agriculture, we expected that we will develop the e-commerce, and the e-commerce will be the tool to support the producer to sell their product, to bring their product more closely to the consumers. The last point in terms of the agriculture sector is that the Ministry of Agriculture are trying to digitize in terms of the e-governments. So in which we focus on the administration and state management by digitize whole the process for how can I say, for the admins, and for the policy formulation, and for the how can I say, for the processing all the paperwork. Instead of paperwork at the moment, we will try to digitize. Next slide, please. So at the moment, thanks for the previous colleague like Anchun Doyos, similar to other countries, Vietnam also have a different quite good practice in terms of digital transformation in agriculture for all the sector, including crops, livestock, forestry, and fishery. We also have applied different kinds of the technology like IoT technology, big data, QR code for the traceability, and even some farm now they are apply the IIs, the especially for the checking the disease with livestock, especially for the big farm and big company. They normally they apply the IoT to monitoring the farm system, and especially for livestock and for pig. Vietnam at the moment we have some kind of how can I say, the blockchain to manage the value chain from the farm to the markets. With the forestry, we also apply different kinds of like visitors technique to monitoring the fines warning system and to collect like IoT to collect the equipment and machinery, and with the fishery we use different kind of technique, especially we use like autonomous technology for seafood processing. We use GIS technology and the Gromber positioning system to monitoring the ship for the catching the catching the fish in the overseas. As you know that the Vietnam now we are warning by the EU for the yellow card. So we expected that by using the GPS for monitoring all the ship when catching the fish in overseas, we expected that we will have a better monitoring system. So that is the some kinds of example for digital agriculture. And honestly, at the moment, we will the digital application in agriculture is more and more popular. Next slide, please. In terms of challenges, we have different kind of challenges for the agriculture digital in Vietnam. Here I try to list out the several challenges. One of the challenges is the fragmented and small scale agriculture and small household. That is the big constraint. And the second is that the quality of human resource in rural areas, relatively low, including the farmer, agribusiness, and even like in terms of the government officer. And the third one is the infrastructure for digitalize in rural area is still underdeveloped, especially compared with the urban areas. And the next challenge is you know that the at the moment many database for the sectors and the locality have not digitalized. That's why all the information now is not popularly published and accepted by the producer, by farmer, by the agribusiness. And the next challenges is you know at the moment starting point of Vietnam for the GCI is still low, and that's why the dissemination and the knowledge sharing also limited. And the last one is I would like to mention about the markets. So the market for the science technology is still underdeveloped in Vietnam, and that is the major challenges for the improve the digitalization in agriculture. So next slide, please. Yeah, so that also, so again, thank you very much, the organizer, for inviting me. If you have any questions, so please, so you we can discuss later. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It's really interesting to hear how Vietnam is enabling some of these tools, these best case scenarios that you were talking about, to play a role in some of these large ag value chains. I'd like to turn the floor over to Pamitra now to talk a little bit about Tani Hub and to tell us a little bit about some of the examples coming out of the digital solution provider that Tani Hub is in Indonesia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lakshmi. And also thank you, ADBI Digital Agri Hub, for inviting me. Also, Pak Lamon from ICDX that extended, actually asked me to be the speaker. So everyone, I'm Pamitra Wineka. You can call me Eka. I'm the CEO of Tani Hub Group. We are Indonesia's largest agri-tech platform in Indonesia. We serve approximately 100,000 farmers in Indonesia, and we are spread it around 4 provinces in mostly in Java and Bali. So Tani Hub itself, we are aiming to build Indonesia's most efficient and reliable farm to business supply chain platform. Probably next. Or could I share screen instead? Sorry.
Just for the, sorry, Pierre here, Pamitra, just for the sake of time, because we're running a bit late, I'll prefer keep sharing here.
All right.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
Sure. So basically, the biggest problem right now in Indonesia is one is like the Indonesian agriculture sector is one of the most important sectors. It actually contributes, is the second largest contributor to Indonesia's economy, with 14% of the GDP coming from agriculture. It employs 1/3 of the population directly or indirectly, with almost 33 million farmers in Indonesia. However, this is also the most inefficient, suboptimal, and also highly fragmented sector. And this is why, even though we have such a huge potential here, but the majority, almost 92% of the smallholder farmers in Indonesia are poor. And mostly it's because of the agriculture supply chain itself needs to go through so many agents, so many middlemen, and it causes a high percentage of waste. So almost 49% of the food produced in Indonesia is actually going to waste due to handling or mismatch in the market. And basically this is something that I realized almost 5 years ago when I wanted to try to help some farmers that I met during my research trip at the World Bank. I realized that this is actually something that we wanted to build to actually impact the 33 million smallholder farmers in Indonesia. Maybe next. So what Tani Hub does is basically we try to simplify the supply chain by basically giving them better access to market, giving them forecast in demand, so that we can help them plan their cultivation, as well as give them estimate of what the market wants, and also move the products faster, because this is the most important part here. So you can have farmers that produce high quality goods and there's a market for it, but if you don't move it fast enough, or you don't handle it properly, you don't have a proper supply chain process, these goods can go from grade A to grade B, or it could even get damaged in the process, because these are perishable goods and they're time sensitive too. So this is why in Tani Hub, we try to not just open markets, but improve the supply chain. And we do have a peer-to-peer lending arm. We call it Tani Fund. So Tani Fund becomes like a fund pooling program that basically connects farmers or farm projects with lenders from all around Indonesia. So individual lenders like me, we can basically lend to farmers in a project, and Tani Hub guarantees to buy all of the products, because most of the products that is funded is actually products that Tani Hub has a market for. Okay, next. So social impact has been the heart of why we established Tani Hub Group, and right now we've supported more than 110,000 farmers. We have 350,000 retail customers, as well as 1,300 small B2B customers that we support. So why is this important? Because we help them procure better quality products at a cheaper price, and helps their business, basically helps them earn more in their business. 1,500 Patriot agents are the agents that help sell in their community. So it's more of like a community group buying that we also penetrate there. And for every hectare that we fund, we open 2 job opportunities through like the Tani Fund program. And overall, we help increase the income of the farmers by 25% on average. And of course, like we help also try to reduce the carbon emissions, basically, because we help rather than like these farmers going from one market to another market, they can go just directly to our what we call packing house, and then the packing house can go directly to the B2B customers or to our other warehouse. So it basically saves a lot of unnecessary trips and also unnecessary, for example, like if the farmer like plants like a lot, we always have a market for them. So this also helps reduce any waste and carbon emitted from the waste of the farms. Okay, next. So the challenges that we actually face right now. So like, you know, as much as the government is a big supporter of the, you know, the agriculture sector, but sometimes, you know, they do give, for example, policies because they lack data on what is being produced. So sometimes they don't understand, okay, we're actually going to expect to harvest a lot of rice, but because they don't want to take a risk on whether they're right or wrong, so they just import a lot. So sometimes it collides with the harvest of the farmers. So by the time the government imports millions of tons of rice or certain commodities, at the same time the harvest of the farmers also come up. So this is where like the farmers are really like, they lose a lot of money because of these import flows. Also the government puts a huge amount of money for subsidies to support the program for the farmers so that they can buy cheaper inputs. But these cheaper inputs are also cheap inputs in a way that they have low productivity, they damage the land, and actually they actually cause the farmers actually to be worse off in the long run, because basically, you know, with lower productivity and with a more damaged land, you know, the farmers actually will in the future will also earn less. So this also messes up a little bit on like the production plan for like farmers that we work with. You know, we try our best to give them to fund them also the best input so that they can have the best productivity, and also they can maintain their land at a good you know, a healthy land, basically. And the last part is connectivity, because we try to do like a lot of monitoring for farmers so that they can give us estimates of like what they're about to harvest. But sometimes connectivity is always a problem there. But I guess there's new technology with like what Cropin is doing, like using satellite image and all that. That is something that we haven't explored with, but we're really interested to do that in the future. Okay, I guess next is just thank you slide. Okay, thank you everyone. Just trying to be fast.
Thank you so much, Pamitra, and I apologies that we're running out of time here. But I think all three of our speakers, representatives from India, Vietnam, and Indonesia, have painted a really interesting picture. There's just so much more to delve into, but unfortunately we're running out of time with respect to what the governments are doing in terms of enabling the environment, as well as what some of these digital ag providers, solution providers are also able to do with respect to sustainability and scale. And we've seen that through Cropin and Tani Hub. I guess just one really quick question, if I can, from just a one line or two from each of the speakers and from each of the panelists around what are some of the next steps? What's just one next step you'd like to see from either the enabling environment to create a better enabling environment for you as a digital solution provider, or in the case of Eng, if he's still there, what's one aspect you'd like to see with respect to what IPSARD could be doing moving forward in the short term to enable more digitalization. So I'll start with Pumitra since he went very quickly through his slide deck.
Sorry, my signal was a little bit bad. Could you repeat that question again?
Just a really quick one line with respect to next steps, and how you anticipate, is there something you'd like to see in the very near future with respect to enabling environment? Is there something you'd love to see that would help you further scale or help you further mitigate some of these challenges that you just talked about in your last
just
slide?
The understanding for an investment in data, I guess. I think data is always like the source of every kind of advance in tech. Basically, you need data for that. So data, a proper data, basically database, the warehouse that can be shared with the government. So for example, startups like us, we're really happy if you can share data to them. If they can also invest in, for example, services like from Cropin to do the monitoring on that and use that data for policy making, that would help a lot, because then they don't need to do sudden imports. They don't need to, for example, flood the market with inputs, subsidized inputs, because certain markets are already they already have access to inputs, and they can actually go to other regions. It's I think something related to data is always the most useful thing, in my opinion.
Thank you. Yes, data, it's becoming a really strong theme across session 1 and session 2. Thang, really quickly, I want to turn to you. I know that we're running out of time, but what is just kind of one thing you would focus on with respect to next steps? Is there something specific in the short term that IPSARD is going to be doing? Just 1 or 2 words around the next steps that you're thinking about with respect to digitalization and the roadmap for Vietnam.
Thank you very much. I think at the moment, the most important things either we need to digitalize the data system.
Yes, it is becoming a really strong theme.
Yeah, for the the data system here is not only for agricultural lands. It's not only the digitalized farm costs. However, the digitalize here including the information integrated from the weather's information, and based on that, it integrated with the productivity of crop or the animal. If you based on that, you can forecast about the disease for crops. So I think at the moment the service is very important. That is and really should be the public services. The government should invest and provide the service for the farmer. Because in Vietnam, as you know, that we have 10 million households farmer, and most of them are small. And I think the second thing about the in Vietnam now is that we need to select some efficient and how can I say efficient technology, and we can do the piloting for that. So after that, I agree with Asan and also Pamia. We need to scale it up, but at least we need to do it some kind of good. So I think it's 2 things. So from that, the farmer enterprise, they can learn that. So such kind of project like Adjans and also Pasma presented is very interesting. So that I think that is 2 things that we need to focus on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And Arjun, really briefly, is there something you'd like to point to with respect to Cropin in terms of next steps?
Yeah, sure. At the business level, and in terms of doing isolated projects, it's not a problem for us. We have already done many where it becomes a one-time project, and it becomes a one-time program just to have pest and disease services, or measuring the crop stress and water stress, or having a platform built for transaction between the buyers and the producers, or just serving any solution for reducing the risk for financial institution. But now we are looking at long-term sustainable programs where we would like to seek help from development institutions and governments to bring in their muscle power to build an ecosystem, right? So can we have governments and development institutions talk to buyers, if they want to engage with smallholder farmers, and what is the mode of transaction, what are the modalities, we are ready to provide the data and services and the platforms as well as the service delivery. Can we also have, banking institutions, financial institutions who are ready to work with the farmers on the back end? So, we talk to a lot of banks and they simply come and tell us, okay, give us a credit worthiness farmers. And they're not interested to know the process of making a farmer a credit. So for the banks, if we kind of start a project with say 100 farmers today, and in the next 2 years, make them really credit worthiness, then is there a bank who's ready to wait for the next 2 years and is ready to give us business after 2 years, right? So this is the kind of, the next level thinking, business level thinking that we are trying to do, is to from the focus of small and isolated and unsustainable projects, going towards a larger ecosystem where and we need help from governments and development institutions to connect us with buyers and financial institutions, because everything Cropin can't do or any AgTech cannot do on its own. Ultimately, we are just technology providers, and as I say, technology is never a problem. Gets 4 software or hardware engineers, make a solution for that. But the challenge is technology adoption and sustainability. Technology is never a problem. Technology adoption and sustainability, that's where I think we are focusing on.
Thank you so much for those insights from all of our panelists. And I know we're out of time now. I'm going to pass it over to Jessica with a huge apologies and leave it at that. Thank you so much. And I hope the audience is able to take away some of these key lessons. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi, and thank you to all our speakers. No apology for running over. It was fascinating. We would request to our audience 5 more minutes of your time. We have a very short 3-minute video that will provide you an overview of the Digital Agri Hub dashboard. So a really valuable resource for all these solution providers. And so we will go directly into that video, and then we will just have a very short wrap up. So please, if you are able to stay for 5 more minutes, we would really appreciate your valuable time.
Good day to all visitors and welcome to the demonstration of our platform. This presentation aims to show you this working tool and let you know how to find digital solutions through our dashboard. The first step is simply to access the homepage through digitalagrihub.org. On the homepage, you can find the navigation menu that leads you to different pages on our platform. Insights gives you access to blogs and DCAS or Digital Climate Advisory Service themes. News and Event displays an updated agenda on upcoming events and news around the hub. Under the tab About Us, you can find everything on who we are and what we do. The dashboard, which is the heart of the Digital Agri Hub, can be accessed by either clicking on the dashboard on the navigation bar or via clicking the green button that says View Dashboard. Through this dashboard, Digital Agri Hub publishes data on digital initiatives for agriculture around the world, revealing information about suppliers and their digital solutions, as well as monitoring digital developments for agricultural transformation worldwide. It provides insights for small-scale producers and supports investment in solutions that have real impact on the ground. The dashboard gives us access to a repository of data on digitization. This dataset is now gradually expanding to provide balanced global coverage through data collection and networking. At the moment, the dashboard contains 541 solutions. You can search the database by applying one or more filters, like the type of technology you're looking for, such as big data, artificial intelligence, drones, GIS, and many more. In addition, you can select use cases like finance or supply chain management. You can select organization types, stages, or tags. Another option is search by countries. For this, you simply go to the map, and by hovering over country, you will find information on the number of initiatives operating in this country. By clicking on the country, the information of the solutions is automatically displayed in the part below. This list of results shows the details of the selected initiatives, as well as their statistics and infographics at the bottom of this page. The statistics show the number of initiatives launched each year, as well as the number of initiatives using specific technologies and the type of organization, whether NGO or government, and the number of use cases. If you found a solution that interests you, click on the button that says Read More. Here you can find a brief description of the digital solution, the direct link to the provider's website, as well as information about the technology used, a map, financing information, language, among others. We hope the small demonstration has been useful for your future searches on AgriHub. If you have any questions or comments, please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you for your attention and have a nice day.
Thank you, Pierre, for showing the video, and I hope everyone found that useful and that you're able to access that resource and see all those solution providers. So it's now my pleasure to invite back Sander, lead coordinator for the Digital Agri Hub, to just end today's session with some more useful resources and pointers for you all.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks all for your very good discussions in these 2 hours. I really enjoyed this. I learned a lot about what's going on in Asia and what the next steps are. Just to close, if you want to interact with the Digital Agri Hub, then please send us an email. You have suggestions, here is our email address. If you want your digital solution to be in Digital Agri Hub, then also let us know. And there's also a D group in the bottom of this slide. Please go there and participate in the discussions actively. In this way, we're trying to create this virtual community that also can meet each other in person, but also virtually, and keep the conversation going. Finally, I want to draw your attention to this post-event evaluation. We were curious to learn what you thought of this event, whether we missed things, whether we can improve things, but also what you really liked, what we should do more of. So let us know. And with this, I want to close. We are a few minutes over time. And thanks to the Asian Development Bank Institute for working with us on this very exciting session, for all the panelists and speakers, and Gigi and Lakshmi from Grameen for guiding the sessions, and finally the Dgroups Foundation for hosting the event and facilitating all the steps we took today. So with this, really thanks a lot for your attention, and I'm looking forward to see you in the next sessions. Yeah, so see you somewhere around. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sander, and thank you, a huge thank you again, just to reiterate that, to all our moderators, panelists, organizers, the team, and of course our audience, you, the participants. Thank you for all your interactions in the chat and the Q&A. Please do join the D4Ag group, make sure you access the database, and we hope to see you again at future events. Thank you very much, and we wish you all a pleasant rest of your day.